Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend and host, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I am joined again here with Ellen Frost. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, everyone.
Ellen has been on the podcast for several different episodes, and this time we are really doing something we've never done before, and I'm excited to talk to her about a design studio's year of sourcing locally. And that means that we're going to go we're going to take a look at her business month by month and what they're kind of buying and what they're kind of doing. But before we jump into that, friends, if you are enjoying this podcast and the resources that we're sharing with you, it helps me so much if you post a review. And friends, it does not have to be a paragraph. If you just review and post a couple of encouraging words and rate it, that means that the podcast app that you're listening on will show our podcast to people that are browsing, looking for something to listen to. So I read them all, and I appreciate so much every single one of you that have already done it. Y'all, it just makes my day to sit down and peruse the reviews, and it gives me ideas of things to talk about. And actually, this topic today came from a listener's suggestion, and I thank you so much for that. So you can always learn more about the work that the Gardener's Workshop is doing over at thegardenersworkshop.com. So for those of you that may not be familiar with Ellen Frost and the work she's doing in Baltimore, Maryland, and has been doing for 15 years now. And I'm going to ask Ellen to just give us a rundown for those folks that have never met you before, Ellen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm the owner of Local Color Flowers. We are a floral design studio located right in the middle of Baltimore, Maryland. And we are a little unique in the floral design world in that we source all of our flowers locally. Everything we use come from farms within 100 miles of Baltimore. And that has been the case since we started in the beginning. We didn't start traditionally and then switch to local. We really started with the idea of sharing local flowers in the beginning, just with wedding clients, and have expanded since then. And so we do all the things that a traditional florist does, like weddings, events, classes, retail, but we do it with local flowers.
Okay. So friends, you have to know that, I'm just so fascinated with this model that Ellen's kind of the trailblazer. She was doing this long before, local was cool, right?
That's
I mean,
true.
now, a lot of people have worked for a lot of years to bring this local vision back to the forefront. And Ellen is really a trailblazer in bringing it into the florist designer circle. And we're just really, I'm honored that we actually publish her course, which is, growing your business with local flower sourcing. And you'll hear more about that at the end. We'll let Ellen tie this up in a little bow at the end and tell you a little bit more about that. But it's just really an honor, Ellen. And thank you for, again, taking some of your business time and spending it with me.
Of course.
All right. So what we want to get right down to is I want to go through, and I actually made my list here so that I can jot notes so I can put them in the show notes.
I'm so excited for this topic. I feel like I have never really had an opportunity to talk like a full year's worth of local sourcing. It's great.
I mean, the down and dirty is what people want to know. It's like, I don't think people are going to build a business just on this, but it gives them a vision. It gives growers like, holy cow, how does she buy that then? And then they can go listen to another episode where you talk about how y'all cultivated some winter growers. And there's just a lot of great stuff. So I want you to mention, we're going to start at January.
Okay.
And I want to know what you would typically be sourcing that month and a little backstories if you want to about that. And also what's kind of going on in your business during that time, because I know that evolves too. So out of the gate, January.
All right, January. January is coming off of heavy, busy winter season. So January for Eric and I personally, we take a little bit of a break. We visit family because the truth of the matter is that for this business, we don't always get to spend holidays with friends or family. You know, we're often working. These are often floral holidays too. So we take some time in January to visit family. And the shop continues to run. Thank goodness we have an amazing team. And we are really doing mostly daily deliveries, subscriptions, and then retail during January. We generally don't take any big weddings in January anymore, not because we don't have the flowers, but more because I'm too nervous. I think as I get older, I'm more nervous about the weather. I'm more nervous, you know, just about everything. So we kind of keep weddings, if we do them really small or like elopements or pickups, really small weddings during January. So it's a little bit slower pace, which is great. And then what we're sourcing. So number one, tulips. Tulips are like our main flower in January in terms of like kind of focal leaf flowers. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and what you need to tell these people is we are not talking about the tulips you see down at the grocery store, right?
It's
the
nothing
variety.
like the grocery store tulip. These tulips are the most, I mean, I'm not kidding you, the most spectacular doubles, fringes, parrots, unique colors. These tulips are amazing. If you look at grocery store tulips and you see like, you know, just primary color, teeny tiny heads, barely colored, this is not that. These are what we call fancy tulips. So right off the bat in January, we're getting fancy tulips. We're also getting anemones. Anemones are huge around this time. And then we're getting sort of a smattering of other things: snaps, stock, sweet William. Maybe we're starting to see callas. We're starting to see heirloom carnations from Hendricks, and we're getting our first flowering branches, which is always quince. Quince always sets the year off with our first flowering branches. And then lots of, you know, sticks. This is stick season. So curly willow, pussy willow, fantail willow, red twig dogwood, yellow twig dogwood, all the sticks. And those are coming, you know, mostly from Maryland. During that time, we do buy from Hendricks, which is a flower farm in Pennsylvania during this time. So we're sort of spanning Maryland, Pennsylvania during January.
Okay.
And everything is really
That's
pretty.
a lot.
It's like a pop of spring in the middle of winter.
I mean, I think that people think, well, she certainly can't do this in January. Personally, I thought that.
We can definitely do it in January.
That's pretty. All right, let's move to February. So what are you?
February, you know what's in February. Valentine's Day is in February. So it's a little bit bonkers. And we, again, try to keep our weddings to a minimum. We're doing daily deliveries, subscriptions, retail, and then Valentine's Day is really our big floral holiday. And for that, we're doing all the things. And so we're getting all the same stuff we had in January, but now we're starting to add in paper whites. We're starting to add in, you're not going to believe this, locally sourced orchids. We're talking, yeah, we have one grower in Montgomery County, Plant Masters, who grows locally grown orchids. And I know Sunny Meadows grows them too. So we have talked about that before. There are literally no cut orchids anywhere in our region. Plant Masters is the only people who have them, and they are stunningly beautiful. So they're only available like the 2 weeks around Valentine's Day. So we've got paper whites coming on, we've got orchids, and then we start to see things like freesia. We start to see, trying to think of what other, Gerbers are starting to come in. And then right at the end of February, really at the very end, and this is on the verge of March, is when we start to see ranunculus start coming on. And everybody is waiting for ranunculus. That is what everybody is waiting for.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
All right, so that's February, and we've got what you were doing. Now, what is March looking like?
So March starts wedding season for us. This is really the kickoff to the season. Like this year, we had our first wedding last Saturday. first big wedding. So this is, you know, full on arches, centerpieces, the whole thing. So we have weddings, and then still our design classes usually start back up about then, and we're doing retail and subscriptions and single orders. And March is really the month that like we always say, the lean days are over. So it's not tight anymore in March. In March, we start to feel abundance again. So snaps, stock, ranunculus, tulips, anemones, butterfly ranunculus, so much freesia, sweet peas start coming on. We still have callas, we still have carnations. And so March is really, you know, it's the first month of spring. It's a lot of interest in flowers again at that time. So March really for us is about abundance. And I will also say that March is the first month for us that we have field flowers. So this past, well, actually yesterday, so that was what, March 20th, was our first harvest of city grown field flowers here in Baltimore. So we start to make the transition from greenhouses, hoop houses, tunnels, you know, row cover, to field grown flowers, right around now.
All right. So I imagine April gets a little kind of crazy, doesn't it?
April is crazy, because April really is like, we're getting now into peak wedding season. So that means every weekend weddings. And really, it's also a time when a lot of corporate events happen, when a lot of school events happen. So we're also doing a lot of midweek special events like corporate dinners or high school alumni parties. There's lots of that happens in April before things get crazy with graduations and stuff. So now April is full on field tulips, field daffodils, still hoop house stuff coming through like ranunculus and anemones, those kind of things. We're starting to see more flowering branches. So we've got cherry and peach. We've got cherry and peach are probably the big ones, like end of March, beginning of April, but we're definitely seeing more and more big flowering branches. Towards the end of April, we're getting into things like spirea. Yeah, poppy. So yes, poppies, I will say poppies, we have them all winter. We start with them in January, and we do have a smattering of them throughout the winter season. And the only reason I say didn't mention poppies is that like they're so particular that we end up using them a little less frequently because we're usually using them for events. We don't usually use them as much for like weekly orders or single orders because they just have less of a vase life and they're much more, they're fragile. And so when our weddings start, that's when we really start to use poppies in a big way. So we have them all winter, but we're not really using them as much until we get into events. And then at the end of April, right at the tip of May, is one of my favorite things of the season, every season. We have a peony called Mel's Peony. It's a single pink. The petals are like crepe paper. They're the first peony of the season, and they really come on like 2 or 3 weeks before every other peony. They're only grown by one grower, Seaberry Farm. And this is just a short, quick story. One of our first farmers was Mel Heath. He was one of the first 3 growers that we ever bought from. We bought from him for years. And when he passed away, Seaberry Farm, there's a very strong flower community in our region. So Mel had arranged before he died for Seaberry to come and dig up all of his peonies. So all of those peonies, which a lot were like standard varieties, but this one special early one that everybody calls Mel's Peony, Seaberry dug up all those peonies and brought them to their farm on the Eastern Shore. And so we continue to have that early blooming named in his honor, Mel's Peony, right at the end of April. And for us, it's like, it's not just the perfect flower and the perfect season and the perfect remembrance of him, but pairing that early peony with ranunculus, with spirea, with fancy tulips. It's like all of the good flowers at 1 week. You know, it's like all the things cross. Like sometimes we have that with dahlias and mums, and we call that like the best week when dahlias and mums are both available. It's like that with peonies. When peonies and ranunculus and tulips that last week of April are all around, it's like magic. We love it.
You know, you just said something, and I just want to say this. Ellen, you are a big part of why there's an amazing flower community where you are. You have cultivated, supported, created. So I just wanted to say that. Y'all have to listen to our other episode about Ellen talking about her business model and what they've done. So anyway, just had to say that.
Thank you.
All right, May.
May. This is probably the most bonkers month of the year. There are others, but May is truly bonkers. So there are all kinds of corporate things, all kinds of school things. And of course, Mother's Day for us is the biggest flower event of the year. Mother's Day is bigger than Valentine's Day for lots of reasons, because we have more flowers, because the weather's nicer, because people are buying flowers for their wife and their mother and their neighbor who's a mother. There are lots of people buying flowers for Mother's Day. So now we're getting, you know, field stuff is in full, is going on, but we're starting to see the end of some things, right? Like tulips are done. Ranunculus is on the verge of being done. Some of those, you know, spring flower anemones for sure are done. And so we're starting to get into things like full-on peonies. We're starting to see larkspur. And you know better than anyone, we're starting to see some of those cool flowers coming through. We're starting to see field snaps. We're starting to see chamomile and yarrow, you know, towards the end of May. Delphinium, all those spike flowers that come at the end of May. We're really starting to see it's almost like a different season. It's like late spring. Early spring is really those bright, you know, things like tulips and ranunculus, but really now we're getting into blues and grays and purples and spike flowers and so much pink in the peonies. You start to see a color palette change. You start to see the flowers change. And you're starting to get a taste of what summer, moving into summer, is going to be like.
All right. And so June.
Okay. June, I have to tell you, is a tricky month for us because there's a lot of flowers available. You're starting to now see campanula, which is one of our favorites for June. Larkspur and delphinium are at their peaks. The problem with June, or the challenge with June, is that our peonies are ending, you know, like maybe the first week of June. And then what is a focal flower until dahlias? We are in this weird period of little to no focal flowers. So what we're starting to like encourage our growers, we have been doing this the last couple of years, is sunflowers. Sunflowers are great that time of year. And for us, they are like the perfect focal flower for that time of year. So any of those smaller headed, uniquely colored sunflowers. And I know you can speak to all the sunflowers, but that is a great transition flower for us to get us to dahlias. Which is, you know, sort of our next focal flower.
And so the wedding season continues on, and
we're doing all the things in June. And the only thing we're doing a little less of, definitely still lots of weddings, but we're doing less design classes because people are starting to go on vacation. They're starting to, you know, be out of town. So we have tried to adjust our schedule accordingly, because for years we sort of ignored that and just tried to plow through and said like, okay, June, July, August, we're slower. So let's offer like classes every week. But what we didn't realize is that like we were slower for a reason and everybody was away. And so even though we had time to offer classes, people were not, that was not the time for classes for most people. Most people were doing other things. And it was almost like, okay, I'll be back in September. I'll be ready for that in September. So in June, we're definitely still doing weddings, retail, single orders, subscriptions, but just a little less on the class side.
All right. So what is July looking like?
July in Baltimore gets real, real hot. Hot is like an understatement. July and August are very hot, very steamy in Baltimore. And so over the past few years, we have tried to act accordingly. So we've tried to get a little smaller, if you will, in the summer. So it's a little bit weird because a lot of field growers, this is like when their stuff starts to pop, right? So you're getting, zinnias and marigolds and, all of the hot summer stuff is starting to come in then. But we are taking a little bit of a step back. So we're still open for retail, still doing single orders, still doing subscriptions, but there are very few weddings in July. There are very few classes in July for all those same reasons. It's too hot for people. They don't want to get married and they don't want to come to classes in July. So a little bit smaller. Our staff, we sort of rotate through vacation time during that time. But you'll really start to see all of the summer stuff really getting started. So dahlias are starting, zinnias are starting, scabiosa. You're starting to see celotias again. You're starting to see
Lysianthus.
Yeah, Lysianthus comes. It's unfortunate. We always say it's unfortunate because Lysianthus is like one of our favorite flowers that comes during a time when we are very slow. And so you start to see Lissy like 3rd week of July, 4th week of July. And we always try to do a little something special, like a Lysianthus day or a little Lysianthus, something on Saturday to sort of promote Lysianthus because it is like the most beautiful flower and the most beautiful wedding flower at a time when we just don't do a lot of weddings. So we really, I know. And, for the second flush, when people have a second flush in the fall, that's really when we need it for weddings. That's really when we're starting to, want it. And I should say one thing I haven't talked about, and I can just jump in for sort of summer is, for a lot of the winter, we don't have a lot of foliage. We're just using mostly evergreen foliage. Magnolia, boxwood, arborvitae. It's super boring, but it gets the job done. And it's not really until like May that we start to finally see foliage again with Solomon seal, which is for us, we have like a Solomon seal celebration every year because it is like, thank God we have foliage. And Solomon seal is, if you harvest it correctly, is super long lasting. It's super beautiful. Everybody loves it. We love it. And you have it for like, most of May and half of June. We also are using Buplurum a lot as a foliage. I know it's not technically a foliage, but Buplurum, starting middle of May to up to July 1st we're using a lot of Buplurum as foliage. And then once we get in the summer, July, now we're starting to see all the mints, all the geraniums, all Dusty Miller and Lamb's Ear. And now we're just like inundated with foliage, which is great because we love using foliage. But for the first part of the year, there's just not a ton available in terms of foliage. So that adds to my July. June, July is really when we start to see a lot of foliage back in the mix.
Okay. So what's August looking like?
Still really hot. But we're starting, and lots of like, we're just starting to see those fall colors starting to come. So more sunflowers, starting with amaranth, starting with, all the many colors of celosia. And I will say that I neglected to sort of start the June. June marks the beginning of local roses for us. So we're seeing roses heavy in June and then continue on through the summer. And as they become a little more prolific in our region, those are an opportunity to use those as a focal flower, which we never really took into account because we never had enough of them. But we're starting to see that that is sort of a focal flower that we can start using in around June. So, August, we're also seeing hydrangeas, which we don't use a ton of in design, but there are opportunities to use it in design, and there is a lot of it available. We're still seeing snaps, but we're really starting to move into fall at that point. And any growers, we do have a few growers that also are trying to like cut back a little bit in the summer. I know like Mima does this, but some people around us are starting to say, okay, let me cut back a little bit in the summer and let some of these newer growers, take the summer, because there's a lot available in the summer and there's just not as much work in the summer.
Right.
So any of those growers who sort of cut back in the summer, once you get to mid-August, it is all wheels go for the rest of the season for everybody. So mid-August is when you start to see weddings come back, when you start to see those growers who took a break in the summer come back. And really, like I said, starting in mid-August, it is every stem is sold, every grower is crazed, every florist is crazed right through the end of the season.
And so I would guess September is just, and as a grower, I will say that because so many people fall victim to everything you just said about having so much in the summer, you're not selling it, you're burnt out, you're killing yourself.
Yes.
And then that leads you to not plan well for the fall. And then all of a sudden they're knocking your door down wanting flowers and you have nothing.
I have to say, focusing on the fall is way more important than focusing on the summer. I know as new growers, summer seems like
easier,
easy time to do it.
Yep.
And especially if you're a grower who doesn't grow full time. If you have a job, if your kids are out of school in the summer, it feels easier. But I will tell you, florists, especially wedding florists, the fall is the time to focus. And that's what Maya from Hill and Homestead, we've worked together for 10 years. And just in the last 2 years, she has really said, like, okay, I want to be ready for the fall. I don't want to feel burnt out September 1st, because I know my florists, that's their go time. I want to be ready for them. And so she said, okay, let me cut back in the summer. Let me really prepare. Let me get my team ready. Everybody's rested. The heat of the summer is over and we are a go. And I will tell you, from the florist perspective, that makes all the difference to us. That makes all the difference, because those growers are ready for us. They have planned their field so that things aren't tired in September and October. Yep. They planned for the peak to be, end of September, middle of October. So now we're starting to see, a million kinds of marigolds. We're starting to see, all of those tiny little specialty zinnias, Persian carpet, Aztec summer, like all of those really cool later fall colored zinnias. Still with the amaranth, still with celosia. We're starting to see lots of fall foliage. So we're starting to see hibiscus, autumn splendor. We're starting to see smoke bush and nine bark and all of those dark foliages that add so much interest to fall weddings. And, at this time, we're also at peak dahlia season. So every grower has a million dahlias, every size, every shape, every color, everything. Dahlias are everything in September and October. And if you're a local grower selling to a wedding florist who sources traditionally, most of those florists are not able to buy good quality dahlias from the wholesaler. They just look terrible for the most part. And I would say, that is a great in with a more traditional florist, because that's a leg up or a foot in the door with them. Grow great dahlias, get them in, and then start selling them all the other stuff that you have. And so for us, September is crazy. October is crazy. We start to do dried flower stuff in October, and that just adds like another dimension to what we're doing. So we offer dried wreath classes. We offer dried wreaths for sale. We offer dried bouquets for sale. And so that's just like another level of, and we're doing the drying ourselves. You know, we're doing drying throughout the season, but it's at that point that we have enough product that we can really start to do dried stuff again. So late September, early October for that.
And let me say this, I'm writing myself a note. You did a great webinar on a dried wreath. And so I'm going to put the link that if people want to request to have that, and it is an awesome class. So we will have the link that you can request that webinar from Ellen.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So you're still seeing probably the same flowers in October as you are in September, right?
Yeah, but we have frost in October. Our frost date here is second week of October, third week of October, and then everything changes, right? Every single thing that we do changes with frost. So because we're in Baltimore City, our Baltimore City growers have a little reprieve. We usually don't see frost in the city until Thanksgiving, but most of the growers that we buy from, once they get a frost, many of them don't have any season extension kind of stuff. So we're sort of done with them for the season, if you will. There are, of course, a few things that will continue to go outside if there is a frost that is not like a killing frost, like Salvia leucantha, hairy balls usually stick around for a while. Some of the foliages, and then heirloom mums are really our next big, our big focal flowers. So those are grown in the field, but they're also grown in tunnels. And those start to pick up right, you know, as dahlias lay off. So mid-October. We're also seeing, you know, marigolds are going to go through then. We may be having, you know, sort of antique hydrangeas through then, and still some foliages, but we're really starting end of October to be thinking about indoor growing again. So we're trying to reach out now to people who do season extension. So like we have like Plant Masters, for instance, they're in Montgomery County. They have lots of hoop houses, lots of greenhouses. And I will tell you, like last year, without them, we would not have gotten through that weird, it's a weird time for us, like frost through, I would say like mid-December, when we start to get tulips again. So it's a weird period where Plant Masters, thank God, had like 3 greenhouses full of heirloom mums that filled our Thanksgiving orders for us. They were also still having, Salvia leucantha in there. They had hairy balls, and definitely marigolds. They were still going. And we even had like a few like straggling zinnias through that time.
Ornamental kale.
Yeah, cabbage. So kale, cabbage and kale start maybe for us. Here's the thing. They could get harvested like towards the end of October, beginning of November, but they get better with time, right? They get colored more with the cold weather and the longer they're in. So we try to wait really until almost Thanksgiving to start buying cabbage, because one, we're trying to not use what we don't need until we need it. And it's a weird way of thinking, but it's like, okay, I don't want to use up all the cabbage in October when I still have a bunch of options. I want to save that until I really need it. And until it's really colored up and looking like its best cabbage self. So that's about mid-November. And that is like fully what fills our Thanksgiving arrangements. Along with, we're back to sticks. You're starting to see orange winterberry make an appearance. So that's like, end of October, Halloween into Thanksgiving. Yellow winterberry, those winterberries they take up a lot of space in arrangements and they look great. They're very seasonal. We have things like, we still have eucalyptus then. So eucalyptus is like a weird crop because for us, it's like one of those crops that I never know when to tell people it's available. It's like some growers grow it in the winter, some grow it in the summer, some grow it in the fall. It's like not consistent at all, like when we have it, but it seems that the growers who grow it in greenhouses or tunnels are doing the same thing we do. They're saving it until, the first week of November when nobody has anything else. And then they're like, okay, now we've got a full, strong month of eucalyptus for you. And so that's when we start to see that.
All right. So, and you're doing in November, you still high in weddings?
Until Thanksgiving, weddings both decline at Thanksgiving and we sort of are more careful with what we take after Thanksgiving. And I will tell you that November has become more of a wedding month because September and October are so crowded that a lot of people can't get dates in those months. So it's sort of spilled over to November, but also our weather here is still pretty nice in November. So you can still have an outdoor wedding or a partially outdoor wedding in November and get away with that. So we're still doing weddings. We are doing tons of classes. So we're still doing dried wreath classes. We do a Thanksgiving centerpiece class, which is, I would say, the highlight of many people's floral design years. We have people, I mean, it's kind of stupid because all of the same 15 people come to the class every year. So there's not a lot of room, like it sells out almost instantly. It's not so much as a class as it's just the time when people come to make their Thanksgiving arrangements. So we're doing that for sure. And then the day after Thanksgiving, so this is still November, we are full on winter, full on Christmas. It's like a switch flips. Like we are go with Thanksgiving until Thanksgiving, and literally the next day,
Black Friday.
Nobody wants to see orange. Nobody wants to see yellow. It is all evergreens, all red berries, all cut poinsettias. It is, it's winter then. And we start our wreath classes our winter wreath classes the day after Thanksgiving. We do them that weekend. We do them the following weekend. We're doing winter in a jar. We're doing much more seasonally winter feeling almost right away after Thanksgiving. So that's still in November.
And so in December, you have cut poinsettias. I would imagine they're at their height, and sticks.
Yep. Lots of sticks. We are starting to see anemones again. We're starting to see tulips again. We are seeing.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's that fast. Like the second week of December, we're seeing, and we have had, the pandemic has sort of thrown that off a little bit because people's bulbs came late. So things were a little bit later this year. But certainly we're using cabbage to its fullest at this point. And we are doing lots of evergreens. So, I mean, if you look at our stuff in the winter, it's like everything is evergreens, pine cones, and sticks and berries, with a few flowers thrown in. It is really much more foliage branch based at that time of year. And then we are, we still have, and again, snaps are like we have one grower, Flowers by Bowers, who grows in heated greenhouses and grows hydroponically. And they're another grower that I'm like, I'm never really sure what the season is for their stuff because it's really how they plan their schedule out through the year. But we're starting to get stuff from them like mid-November, and that's snaps, Sweet William, stock is starting. Do they have anything else then? Snap, stock, Sweet William. Those are about the ones that start like mid-November and help us get through sort of December, if you will.
Right. I mean, I don't have any room left on my paper, Ellen. You have to stop buying so many flowers.
I know. It's a lot.
And I mean, holy cow. And what I wanted to say when you talked about that, one of the first class that you mentioned, that it sells out every year. So like there's only a set number of people.
Yeah.
We find that, I mean, that's how it works with subscriptions and
Mhm.
CSAs and on-farm workshops. It's like when you build that community, which we talked so much about in our previous episode, those people just want to come and be a
Oh
part of
yeah,
it. And it's the same people showing up all the
totally.
time. And what that means is, as a business owner, you get to spend more time being more creative
Oh
and thinking
yeah.
of ways to bring, because you're not marketing like crazy as you are for,
Oh,
I want to say to new people, it is so easy to think that the community marketing, reaching out to your community and doing stuff isn't going to pay off. We are here to tell you that that's what
100%.
it's rooted in. That's what we are submerged in, right? Is the support of the
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
And you have to invest in that. Well, Ellen, that is quite a list.
The full year.
The full year, I mean, and it's just really kind of a looking glass into that. So, Ellen, I want to, so again, Ellen's business model is she's a design studio that only uses local flowers, of which she just gave us a taste of what, the struggle is of what to choose from, right?
Right.
There's so much. So Ellen, for folks, I want you to tell them how they can connect with you, and then tell them a little bit about your course that teaches people how they can build a business based on local flowers, or just to bring local flowers into their
Yeah.
business. Because friends, what a niche this is.
Totally.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
lay it on us.
So you can find us at Local Color Flowers on Instagram or Facebook, or at our website at locoflo.com. It's LOCOFLO.com. And then we also have another Instagram feed that's called Florist Buying Local. And this is a great place for floral designers, florists, farmers to come learn about local sourcing, about what you can design with local flowers, how to source local flowers. And I will say, like, for both Florist Buying Local and our Local Color Flowers Instagram feed, if you just looked through that same year that we just talked about, you'll see a visual representation of this change in season of flowers, the change in what we do every month, every week. That is really sort of the recorded, the visual recording of this podcast. It really shows you what we're using now, who we're sourcing from. It's a lot of fun. And so, as Lisa said, I also teach a course called Growing Your Business with Local Flower Sourcing. This is a class for anyone who wants to add local flower sourcing to their business model. Whether you're new and you want to source local right from the start, if you are an existing florist or farmer-florist who wants to add some local product into the mix, or if you're a flower farmer who wants to know the flip side of what florists are up to, this is a great course for you. It's really a course that takes you through how to build relationships with growers, how to get through the logistics of sourcing locally, because I know that's one of the things that holds people back, is how logistically challenging it might seem to buy local. We also talk a lot about marketing of local flowers, because it is a little bit different than marketing conventional flowers. And then we talk a lot about community building, just the type of community building we've been talking about today. So it's really a great class for anyone who wants to add local flowers to the mix of their new business, existing business, or dreaming of business.
So I will put in the show notes below a link that you can read more about Ellen's course. And you can get on her wait list. And what that simply means is you get on our email list for specifically when Ellen sends out any information for people that are interested in her course, you'll get that. We'll also remind you when her course, it only enrolls once a year for 5 short days, friends, and that happens in November. And then the class runs from January right up to right before Valentine's Day. And we did that on purpose when, florists are not totally, or designers aren't overcome in work per se. And so, Ellen, I thank you so much for joining me here. And this is just I know we're going to hear a lot about this podcast.
Good.
I think it's just a great looking glass into this world. And so I think you're exactly right that folks, they can go to your local Color Flower Insta feed and see this in person.
Yes.
You know what I mean? See it firsthand. All right, friends, I appreciate y'all joining me here again today. And remember, you can learn more about the work the Gardener's Workshop is doing over at thegardenersworkshop.com, our online courses, links to lots of other resources. And you can read more about Ellen there, and please connect with her on social media. And friends, until we meet again, and thank you, Ellen, so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Till we meet again, friends. Ciao.